What's up, everybody? This is your boy Uber Hikari, aka the Nerd Nigga, here to bring you another video with no frills, just the analysis. And today I'm here to bring you the review of Naruto Chapter 668 entitled The Crimson Springtime Begins. Alright, so let me just come right out and say it. This week's chapter was borderline between subpar and mediocre. It was just, gave you that feeling. Um, so what happened? Guy activated the 8th gate and then pretty much nothing. That's pretty much all the plot progression we got in this chapter. So let me just jump right into the summary and analysis of this chapter. Two things happened in this week's chapter. Guy opened the 8th gate, and since he didn't really do anything, uh, all I can really say about that is he looks beast as fuck. And I wonder what nighttime elephant is, because that's all I can really say, since that's pretty much the only plot progression we got in this chapter. Second thing that happened, flashbacks from Guy's childhood, which I must say I don't really give a shit about. And I think I really should explain myself on these flashbacks, and should take this opportunity to somewhat deconstruct flashbacks as both a literary device and the way in which Kishimoto decides to use them, both for good and for bad. And just explain how this chapter is pretty much an example of using flashbacks in both a positive way and in a negative way. Because this is just whatever. Let's get into it. So flashbacks as a literary device. Generally, flashbacks can be used to fulfill several useful roles, or have several useful purposes. The first is that it can create empathy and or sympathy for a particular character. It allows the audience and the reader to gain a sort of direct insight into the psychological and ethical characterization of the character that the flashbacks pertain to. And in this way, it sort of creates a nexus, if you will, a sort of point of entry for the audience to identify with the character. The second way that flashbacks can serve a useful role for a writer as a literary technique is it can sort of add depth to the moment at hand by humanizing the character and making their imminent death seem more palpable, make the situation more tense, make it seem like it's packed with more tension. And so the character's death gains a meaning and significance that it would not otherwise have had. And this sort of ties into the first point of creating a way of allowing the audience or the reader to identify with the character. And the third function of flashbacks is that it can be a segue for the progression of the plot. So and Kishimoto does this all the time, which is both good and bad, using flashbacks as sort of info dumps so that the plot can progress more smoothly by allowing the audience or the reader to gain more information about what's going on. However, as everybody knows, these flashbacks can have a serious drawback. They're a real double-edged sword for Kishimoto, which is a rather interesting revelation if you think about it, because I don't know of any mangaka who uses flashbacks to the extent that Kishimoto does. I mean, these are a lot of flashbacks. And they come at all sorts of times, doing all sorts of things. And I think he sort of has an over reliance on them. So here are the drawbacks of using flashbacks. If the character in the flashback initially lacks characterization, then it simply backfires. Because what's the point of having flashbacks about a character that nobody really gives a fuck about? Perfect example of this is what I was just talking about, I believe, in either last week's chapter review or the week before, where I talked about Kabuto and how his flashbacks came at what we all thought would be his right before he died or right before he went into Izanami. And my whole point was I didn't really give a fuck about Kabuto to begin with. So why would I care about his flashbacks at all? Another drawback of the way Kishimoto uses flashbacks. It can really detract from the excitement of the moment by delaying the climax. We again, and a lot of people have sort of criticized me for this, but I really don't care. But I don't give a shit about anything except the war. That's all I care about. I just care about the progression of this war, the progression of the fights, because that's what we all come to see. And I'm not even on some meathead type shit where I'm just like, oh, I just want violence, I just want entertainment, I just want action. No, I want the war to continue in every sense of the word, in a psychological sense, in an ideological sense, in the sense of the physical clash. I want the war in all of those various aspects. That's what I mean by I just only care about the war. And by having these flashbacks inserted right before a critical point, at a high point of the conflict between Might Guy and Madara, is just like, what the fuck, man? I don't want to see about Guy's father in a fucking jumpsuit. I don't care about that. I really don't want to see that. Third drawback of the flashbacks. The inf if the information contained in the flashbacks are repetitive, then they're basically non-essential. They're irrelevant. It it really doesn't do anything. And it seems like Kishimoto is constantly skirting this line between using flashbacks in a productive way and using flashbacks in a negative way. And it just seems like he's just, most of the time, he comes up on a negative side. Most of the time, he just fucks it up because he uses flashbacks at such an inopportune moment. And it's it's really it's really annoying. It, in a couple of chapters, we just saw an example of this a couple of chapters ago, where in the chapter "I'm His Father After All" with Minato, and we had all these Minato flashbacks of Minato talking about how I'm Naruto's dad and I'm his father after all. And then right after that, he fucking failed, and we were like, what the hell was the point of those flashbacks? They served no point whatsoever. They came at a ridiculously inopportune time, and the information contained in the flashbacks was completely irrelevant and non-essential because we already know Minato cares about Naruto. We already know Minato is Naruto's dad and how he takes pride in his son and all that other bullshit. We already know this. So those flashbacks were completely irrelevant. And again, perfect example of an inopportune time. Kabuto's flashbacks, Guy's flashbacks right now, and just flashbacks all over the fucking place that just serve no real purpose. It's really annoying. And I'm starting to think that Kishimoto is using flashbacks as a crutch. It's sort of become an artificial sweetener. And I just want to say, Kishimoto, the story can stand on its own without flashbacks. You don't need to try and artificially enhance the moment because we already know, since this war has been going on for years, we already know that this isn't a time to play around. That shit is supposed to be serious. So you don't need to use flashbacks as an artificial sweetener. And in this particular chapter, it was just more of the same of him using flashbacks in a negative way. What was the point of the guy's father, those flashbacks of Guy's father? What purpose did that serve? Do we gain any new information about Guy? No. We've already been through this motif of, hard work versus genius and talent. We understand that real ninja are supposed to sacrifice themselves in order to protect their comrades, just like Guy's father did in the flashbacks. Do we gain any new perspective on Guy's characterization? No. Learn nothing. We really learn nothing new about Guy that adds to the depth of his characterization in any sense. His father espouses the same beliefs as Kakashi, Minato, Obito, Asuma, the will of fire, sacrifice for your comrades. Those who don't protect their friends are worse than garbage and all that other stuff. So it adds nothing new. And not only that, if Guy doesn't die, the impact of the flashbacks would be significantly diminished. It's almost certain. I mean, if we go by what's already happened up to this point, it's almost certain that Guy will not die. Because it seems like in this war, the only people who die are really unimportant people who no one gave a shit about to begin with, like Ino's father or Shikamaru's father. I mean, Madara wound up. I mean, hell, Tsunade was crushed in half by a tree. Complete. I mean, her body was pretty completely severed in half, and she lived. So, I mean, if she ain't dead, and nobody else on the battlefield is dead except some fodder ninja, then why should we believe that Guy's really gonna die? And if Guy doesn't die, then like I said, that significantly reduces the impact of the flashbacks. It completely sucks all the emotion away from the moment if Guy really doesn't die. Because after all, there's no sense of danger in this war. There's no sense that anybody could die at any time, which is what you would expect in a real war, especially in a war against the god of the shinobi world. And this is pretty much made clear with Minato in this chapter. When Minato is like, Guy, don't do it. Nobody wants you to do that. And I'm like, what the fuck? What is Minato talking about? That's bullshit. What do you mean nobody wants him to die? Is Minato really telling Guy that no one wants him to die in the war? I mean, did you think everybody would live? And this is what makes this whole war seem just a little bit too a little bit too bit. I mean, a little bit unrealistic is really an understatement. But this is what makes Minato seem a little bit unrealistic in this chapter. Wasn't he involved in the Shinobi World War? I mean, how many people did he kill? How many people were killed of his friends were killed in that war? Hell, Obito was killed in that war. And here is Minato like, oh, Guy, don't do it. Don't sacrifice your life. I mean, this is a war. Aren't people supposed to risk their lives in war? That's the whole purpose of a war. What are people supposed to do in a war? Especially if they follow this whole ideology of I have to do anything to protect my comrades, even if it means sacrificing my life. So what the hell is Minato talking about in this chapter? It doesn't make any sense. Like I said, this is just another example of the persistent and pervasive non-realistic undertone of this entire war arc, completely personified in Minato's rambling bullshit in this chapter about, no, Guy, don't do it. Nobody wants you to do it. Whatever. Um, so like I said, there's really no discernible sense to these flashbacks. They seem absolutely irrelevant. They don't add any emotional import to the moment because there's no sense that Guy will really die. Didn't give us any new perspective on Guy's characterization. Didn't really reveal any new information about Guy or anything surrounding Guy. I mean, except that his father taught him the 8 gates, which we could have guessed anyway, and the fact that his father died, which is whatever. He's a fucking ninja, of course. I mean, of course he it's possible he died in war or something like that. Whatever. Um, but maybe if Guy really does die, maybe if Madara gives him that bitch nigga treatment, then maybe the flashbacks in retrospect will turn out to have some real important emotional weight. But as of right now, the flashbacks are just completely irrelevant. Don't add anything to this chapter. And like I said, the only thing that happened in this chapter really was Guy releasing the 8 gates, saying nighttime elephant, and pretty much that's it. So, like I said, this chapter was again subpar to mediocre, although I'm sort of leaning towards subpar because we got very little plot progression and only one thing really happened, and then the rest of the chapter was filled with irrelevant flashbacks. So really subpar chapter just because of those damn flashbacks and just because everything again just seems to be really, really drawn out in terms of the pacing. And ever since that chapter where Madara absorbed the Juubi, shit's been going downhill real fast, and it just hasn't picked up lately. And I'm really hoping that this shit picks up because I can't imagine how this can continue with Madara having absorbed the Juubi and being the new sage of the 6 paths and being pretty much the god of the shinobi world, not killing at least one person. And Guy doesn't count. If Guy dies, it doesn't count because he's supposed to die anyway by releasing the 8 gates. So if Guy dies, it would not have been because Madara killed his ass. So that doesn't count for Madara as a death. Anyway, like I said, this has been your boy Uber Hikari, aka the Nerd Nigga. Just brought you another video with no frills, just the analysis. Peace and have a blessed day.